Hey gang, welcome back to Tin Man Customs, where we're getting ready to start another project here. I did get some new Fixit Sculpt, so I shouldn't run into the same problems I did on my previous figure of Backstreet. So I'm going to go ahead with another G1 figure, bring him into Titans Return, and that's going to be G1 Outback. And since in the G1 toy line, this was a remold, repaint of Brawn, that is who I'm going to use for my version of Titans Return Outback. I'll use the recently released Brawn, which is an excellent figure. I am going to use this rifle. Did not come with Brawn. That came with the RID Blurr, who I just used on Backstreet. And that is because Outback had a gun mounted on his back, although he couldn't hold it in robot mode. So I am going to modify that. It's a little loose in Brawn's hand, so I'll have to fix that. But as well, there is nowhere to mount it on his back, which will in turn be the top of the Jeep in vehicle mode. So I will adjust that to where that can fit in there as well. And I'm going to attempt to redo this chest plate a little. I'm going to try and modify it to where it looks more like that as opposed to Brawn's chest. And obviously we'll be resculpting Brawn's head into this Outback look. So first things first, we'll need to get him taken apart and washed all up, and then I will be able to start sculpting away on that head. So we'll get started on that. Alright gang, so he's all taken apart here. All the parts have been washed, and I started work on the head, getting the sculpt more like an Outback character. I had to cut the mushroom peg off of this that was on the Brawn figure and drill a hole through it. And let's see here if you can see that. Let me adjust my light as well. There we go. Alright, drilled a hole through there and into the head here of Nghtbeat and put a screw with a washer in there so I can still have some articulation there. And I also wanted to make sure that there would be clearance once he's reassembled. And that is an incredibly tight fit, but I will still have articulation in there. I also had to cut part of the front bumper off of Brawn there, the part of the grill away. As far as doing any sculpting, I cut, he had a longer chin and sort of a metal goatee, for lack of a better word, on there, and I cut that away. And I also went in and cut a larger area for his visor, because Outback there has a very large visor. So I will be adding that in there with Fixit Sculpt, and sanded down a lot of the angles on his helmet there. Got rid of the antenna completely. That's all sanded down, cut off and sanded. So that should be nice and smooth once we get him painted up. And like I said, flattened out, leveled off a lot of the different angles, and once he gets his visor in there, should be good for painting. I will have to dismantle the head piece again in order to do the spray paint. And with these pieces here, I'm starting to work on a new chest plate to make more of a shape like what Outback's got here. So that's still in works, and I'm kind of figuring that around. The pieces, these pieces are off of a knockoff aerial bot, G1 aerial bot. The one I used on my G1 Galvatron arm cannon. Still using bits and pieces from the mod fodder bin. I may end up having to use some styrene in order to build a chest plate. And also concerned that Hasbro is still going to reveal that they're making an Outback from this mold anyway. But we'll keep moving ahead and see how this goes. here he is, Titans Return Outback. Got him all finished up here, and overall pretty pleased with this one, and I like the colors on him, and I think the Brawn base figure worked out really well. Stands to reason. Let me bring in his G1 self. Here he is. If I can get him to stand. He doesn't like to stand really well. So I didn't think the colors were too bad. I don't like to mix colors that I'm going to spray. Obviously, I don't use an airbrush. I usually just use what I have in the cans, and got some colors that are fairly close enough for me to be happy with. But as I was saying, the Brawn mold worked out really well for using as a base figure, but that does stand to reason, as in the original toy lines, Outback was made based off the Brawn toy. But I think this worked out really well. Alright, so let's get Brawn. He can hang out here for a sec. Let's talk about what we did with this guy. And as you see, the head is completely different. I started with the Generations Nightbeat figure, his head. Since I turned him into an actual headmaster, I had his head laying around. So I carved off a lot and carved out the area for the visor and sculpted that all in, changed his mouth up some. His head could stand to be a little more wider or sharper angles like the original, but I needed to be able to fit him in the area for the transformation. Now, Brawn here has a ball joint on the head, so I had to cut the So I had to cut the ball joint off of this figure, since this head was just a swivel. If we go around in here, you can see, put a screw and a washer up through there into the head to hold that in place. It does still rotate some, but just about as well as Brawn back there does. And his chest plate ended up taking the chest off. I was trying a couple different things that I had lying around from some older mod fodder figures and didn't really like it. So I ended up putting the plate back on that Brawn has here and just use some styrene and Sculpey to get a little more of the somewhat similar shape to Brawn. Outback, not Brawn. The gun is from the RID Blurr that I had just turned into Backstreet, and that was to try and emulate the fact that the original Outback has a rifle as well. And beyond that, the rest of it was all just a repaint. Get him out of the way. And let's see. I had run into some trouble with his ball joints on his elbows. I thought I had sanded down enough before I painted it, and as soon as I moved the elbows for the first time, they completely shredded all the paint off. So I had to take that back apart, sand it down some more, put some more paint on it, and cover it with some clear coat. So I'm hoping that's going to hold a little bit better. But it felt tight when I was putting it on there, so that might be another thing I have to continue to fix. Something else that was a little bit irritating was, I'm not sure if you'd be able to, I shouldn't even mention it because I don't think you can see it on the camera, but there are a few spots where things were glued in there and the glue seeped out and bubbled up, but it had dried clear, and when I went to spray paint it, I didn't notice there was some little blobules there until it was after it was painted. And I did not want to go back and strip everything off of it again and start over. If I had done it as a commission, I'd have restarted that whole chest plate again. So I am going to go ahead and get this guy transformed up so we can see what he looks like in vehicle. Alright, so there he is. I'm going to get Brawn transformed up here as well, just real quick. So, I don't know if you can tell in that fast forward or not that one of the wheels fell off as I was transforming him. That's because during the initial dismantling of him, one of the pegs, the little mushroom pegs, broke off. So if you are going to attempt doing this mod or something like that, be really, really careful when you go to remove the wheels, as those mushroom pegs are very apparently very fragile. So here he is, and here's Brawn with him. You can see they're very, very similar, just swapping out the main base colors. And I'm slightly concerned with this beige right now because there's a few spots that seem to have chipped off, so hoping that that's not going to be a problem later on. Yeah. Oh, and the gun on top. This hole on the top of Brawn was not large enough, so I had to drill through there with a 5mm peg size, so he can have that, just like his original G1 self here. Another transformation really quick. Alright, so there's his original self. He's got the cannon on top. So, yeah, they're very similar in their colors. Got the little black on the hood, black there, and yeah, so there he is. So we'll get him back into robot mode and do our final thoughts. Alright, here we are. There's Brawn's old mold buddy from G1, our Titans Return Outback. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Give me some comments down below. Check out the description if you were interested in knowing what kind of colors I used on him. All of my videos, I list the paint that I use down below, but I don't always mention that in the video. So once again, if you're ever interested, look in the description and you can work on these too. Beyond that, if you really enjoy what you've seen here, go ahead and subscribe and we will get started on the next figure. Thanks a lot for coming by.